أي بوليتيكا زي يقولوا تحبرت سويت من سوين بوليتيكا ده يفلت تقينه ترجم بالله أيضا برات ماني يدمرها أنت تبع له تروي بوليتيكا يدمرها برات بعلو أي مرحني جبهة متعود أنا جبهة برات بزح مسمر زي يقولوا تروي بوليتيكا زي يقولوا حبرت سوين حزب مهر أي مهر عفوا مزحش كقول لك أنا شفت أسرع خسر ما أجلسي ماني وحيو ماني توعي بوليتيكان رأين فهم سلازي حدا هاجراويت حدا توعي زباو سراويت ويقول سراويت كتقبر تقولك توعي بوليتيكا مسو نعوق مرحوك خلاله كل خادر زبان تايو هاي بوليتيكا مرينتي بوليتيكا دي فلت حبرت تسوي من اسي فاتشيمون خمره وي نزح دريج خركبنا نبلد الله أيركبني.
بريزيدنت إسحاق لما لحسان شوعتن حمد ناويان الشعلان قال بغالي بيتكاو حصوة تبال حان تسحب تزرقحنا
بلخيلو تعاطف في أبلو كي تربى شهديلو نويت صوب درب عودة تقاليلو بقول صمود لتوز اسمرب تاريخو حاولت تخلي حزبه وكبار كرات بقال سره بوليتيكا أفريكا معلوز الثيار بقول صمود لتوز اسمرب تاريخو حاولت تخلي حزبه وكبار كرات بقال سره بوليتيكا أفريكا معلوز الثيار حزبه أفريكا اسمعكم بان سرحقية بعد حموت أبلت عالم الثورة والقالسي يعيدنا يعلم تمزازة يلا السعار ناتو المارة ناي والقوس نفذت فترة حزبه وكبار بوليتيكا قرن أفريكا صغير حزبه وكبار ست وثانية زرزر فحصو زرزر فحصو زرزر فحصو قلتات الزندبة كم حدود زي كبرتات زنجسة حزبه وكبار أبكي نبزة الطباب حزبه بوليتيكا حزبه وكبار عالم وساربه حزبه بوليتيكا صرحو زازي وقيادة كهراويت عالم وكرمه هاتزي نور كايدا الشعبية قلبي علمي خلدا حزبه وكبار كلا سم غدا وما نصنع حسب قرن أفريقيا نفلا من قديم المحرن حبيبو عاد حدث تمره باري نفلا من قديم المحرن حبيبو حتيمو عب حدث تمرت سباريو بزحف كفرسو سراور صصحم مساسينو بنقعت زمرح سباريو تسمعوا بمبار عالم عزارب تسمع بلاتك عزرحوا زازيمو قيادك هراويت عالم عقرب عزين نور نورك يدا الشعبية قلب من علم يخودا تسمعوا بمبار كلا سم غدا وما نصنع حسب قرن أفريقيا نفلا من قريب البحرين حتيمو عاد حدث تمره سباري نفلا من قريب البحرين حتيمو عاد حدث تمره سباري بزحف كفرسو سراور صصحم مساسينو بنقعت زمرح سباريو
I can't hear you.
There we go. I think I was muted.
Okay, give me a minute. I gotta plug my power supply in. My battery's getting. I'll be right back.
Okay, we'll wait for you. كسب ጋሽ ክቡር ጋሻና ድመጽእ ኣነ ክጅምረልኩም እየ ከመይ ቀኒኹም ተኸታተልቲ ሶል ሚድያ ሎሚ ክቡር ጋሻ ቶማስ ማውንቴን ሒዝናልኩም መፂና ኣለና ምስኡ ከዓ መትከል መፂሎ ምሳና ብዛዕባ ኩነታት ናይ ከባቢ ቀርኒ ኣፍሪቃን እዚ ኣብ ጎረቤትና ዝካየድ ዘሎን ኩሉ ኣጠቃሊሉ ናቱ ርእቶ ብእንግሊሽ ክህበና እዩ ትርጉም ክንትፍትን ኢና ግን ገሊኡ ከዓ ባዕልኩም ሰሚዕኩም ክትርድዎ ተስፋ ንገብር መጀመርያ እዚ ዝካየድ ዘሎ ናይ ዓለማዊ ኩነታት ከማን ከመይ ነቲ ናትና ከባቢ ከምዚ ንገድሶ ኩላትና ንስሕቶን ኢና ብጣዕሚ ኣብ ከቢድ እዋን ኢና ዘለና ግን ኤርትራሲ ከመይ ጌራ ካብኡ ተነፂላ ከመይ ጌራ ነቲ ኩነታት ተኸታቲላ ነቲ ሃገርና ዝፀበቐ ነገራት ክግበረሉ ኩላትና ክንካተሎ ኣገዳሲ እዩ ሶሎ ሚድያ ከዓ ዕድል ዝሃብካና ብጣዕሚ ነመስግነካ መትከል ምሳና ኣሎ ሃየ ክንበሃል ኢና እዛ መድረክ ካብ ሕጂ ክንጅምራ ኢና ይቀኒየላይ first of all welcome to our solo media Thomas Mountain the journalist the activist you know you've been at it for a long time welcome I hope you're doing well and welcome to solo media and tell us what have you been up to lately
Yaganile. You know, the world is going through some earth-shaking events right now, and potentially most earth-shaking events in my lifetime. So, I mean, the Eritrean Revolution was the real only armed struggle to succeed in the world since 1959. So, I was born a few years before that, so in my lifetime, Eritrean has been the armed struggle that succeeded. Now, so 1991 was a real important date, but when Eritrea gained independence. But today, with the America and Israeli war with Iran, it puts everything into a new focus because we're having to, we're going to talk today about what comes after Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia, but all of that has to fit into the reality of this new world that seems to be shaping up. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean,
in,
that's exactly what we're going to lead to, and your assessment in terms of what Eritrea has been doing. I think while people were laughing at us for decades, making it think like we were not in a position to be able to have power or anything like that, we've done our homework as a people, as a nation, as a movement, and I think what follows ahead for us is pretty much how do we capitalize on the things that we've done in the past, because the world's not going to be the same anymore. So that we're going to discuss. But before I say that, Matkal, I think you're in. If you could chime in a little bit and say hello to Thomas Mountain. Matkal, go ahead.
Hi, Thomas. How are you today? It's really, really an honor and privilege to have you here and to be able to discuss about the geopolitics and the Horn politics. And because, like you cannot separate one from another, everything is interconnected. But it is really, really nice to see you. And it is an honor and privilege having you to have, for giving us the time to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
Yes.
it's
Thank
good to
you,
be back.
Matkal. This is the first time we're having
Good
you
to
for
have you back.
2020. Yeah, this is the first time we're having Thomas back for 2026. Last year we had him in a couple of times. We're going to try to have him in from time to time to give us an assessment, because he's a strong follower, an avid follower of the geopolitics of our region and the world. And our topic today is going to be, where does the future of Ethiopia under Abiy Ahmed go? What's been going on, the implications, why is it like this today? So let's give you the mic, and I think we'll let you to speak, and then we have some questions between me and Matkal. We'll get in and ask some questions. So go ahead, without further ado.
Well, some of the listeners may be new, haven't heard me before, not that familiar with who I am and what my background is. I've been following things in Africa well over 40 years now, and 45 years. And I first began serious investigation in Africa in 1983, when I was introduced to a representative of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front in Los Angeles, where I'd gone to hear Kwame Ture speak. Kwame Ture, the former Stokely Carmichael, who was, amongst other things, the chairman of the Black Panther Party in the United States. So Kwame had a policy of asking, if possible, to have the introductory speaker for his programs be a representative of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, the EPLF. So I'd heard about the EPLF. I'd read about them and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF. And when I got to see Kwame and the EPLF got up and spoke, I was very interested to meet them. And after the program, after their speech and Kwame's speech, I was able to contact them, and I bought a subscription to a Duelist newsletter and a T-shirt commemorating 20 years of the armed struggle. This was in 1983, so in 1981 was 20 years of the armed struggle, and a button. And I began what's since then been a lifelong support for the Eritrean people's struggle for liberation. So I also have well known in, not just Eritrea, but in African history. I even co-taught a course, a graduate level course at the University of Hawaii, where I'm from, on the African influence on world civilizations. It was a graduate level course that I created and co-taught. So, I have a strong background in matters African, historically and politically. But I've always looked at Eritrea as being, what people have said, the Cuba of Africa, because Eritrea is the only country in Africa to come to power through the armed struggle. So successfully complete the armed struggle for national liberation. Others have fought the armed struggle, but they never completed it. It was all done through negotiations at the end. So as a result, Eritrea is the only country really independent in Africa, just like Cuba is the only country in Latin America that came to power through the armed struggle, and is truly the only country that hasn't been up to its eyebrows in debt to the World Bank and IMF, just like Eritrea has never borrowed money from the World Bank and IMF, just like North Korea has never borrowed money from the IMF and World Bank. So, these countries that came to power through the armed struggle are really the only independent countries besides the big powers, right? So that's my background in brief. Let's see, I first visited Eritrea in 2001, where my wife and I got married. I returned again in 2004, end of 2004, to visit, and I was there right after the Sudanese peace negotiations between John Garang and Omar Bashir concluded, and it was after they concluded, but I was there sharing the lobby of the Hamasan Hotel, Ambassador Hotel, with representatives of the Sudan People's Liberation Front, so movement. So they, I moved back. I moved to Eritrea, relocated in 2006, and we lived there until the COVID epidemic stopped all the air flights with medicine, which we need, both my wife and I. And we had no choice. We had to leave. We couldn't stay there without our medication. So we moved back here to the United States in 2021, and we were coming up on 5 years back in Central Virginia, where we live. So, we follow closely the news from the Horn, and my wife's been back a few times, touching bases and seeing family and everything, getting the latest. So what's going on right now, in Ethiopia, I wrote 2 articles last year in June and July. The first one was called Ethiopia, Things Fall Apart. And then the second one in July was Ethiopia, where political power grows from the barrel of a gun. So there I laid out what I saw coming up. The change was not if, but was when. When was the Western UAE-backed Abiy Ahmed criminal gang, mafia, going to be run out of Ethiopia? So, since then, the day has gone close. And it was to the point where, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel pretty closely. It's shining bright. Ethiopia, Abiy doesn't have that much longer. So the question has to be, what comes after Abiy? Because Ethiopia is an empire. It was created by Menelik, the emperor of Ethiopia, Abyssinia in those days. They didn't used to be called Ethiopia. And Menelik, using Italian automatic weapons, conquered his neighbors, including the Oromo, the largest nation in Africa, subjugated them, in the case of the Oromo, particularly brutally, rising to you could charge genocide against the Oromos. Millions died under Menelik's rule. So, what's going to happen? This is an empire. Menelik was a colonialist. His followers colonized Eritrea, but before that, they colonized their neighbors. And the Ethiopians have been celebrating the Battle of Adwa, and they say, we defeated the Italians. Yeah, well, it was 2 colonial armies fighting each other, and one won, and that was Menelik. So, he had weapons from the Italians, and it came back to bite the Italians. And so, he won, and he got to keep his empire. So that's what's Ethiopia. It's a prison house of nations. So as this prison house of nations begins to come unglued at the seams, as the armed struggle for national liberation, particularly led by the Amhara Fano Patriots Army, and as well as the Oromo Liberation Army and others, in a lesser extent, have been wreaking serious havoc on Abiy's military, and has been in between just military defeats and defections, people surrendering, going over to the Fano fighters. It's getting really shaky for Abiy. The day is coming. So, but last Saturday, the United States and Israel attacked Iran, and a war was launched, which is now threatening. By the people that really been following this, the people I respect and know what they're talking about, like Colonel Larry Wilkinson, that's used to be the chief of staff to Colin Powell, and he was a 30-year war planner for the Army. Well, this like the senior war planner, and he was as head of the Pacific Command for the U.S. military back when Pacific Command was the biggest part of the U.S. military. He was in task with setting up war planning situations for where Iran and Israel are today. That was part of his task, besides China and Japan and everywhere else. Okay, so and the others are people like Scott Ritter, who is the guy that blew the whistle on the so-called weapons of mass destruction. One of those that blew the whistle in the war in 2003 when the America invaded Iraq. So then there's others. Well, there's particularly Alistair Crook, who he's the former diplomat and advisor to the EU, who really knows what he's talking about. It's a long background. So they're interviewed on a couple of good places, Judge Napolitano, and as well as Dialogue Works and other channels. From these guys, they're saying that, and they've been saying this for quite a while. People that predicted this war were saying that the United States just doesn't have the anti-aircraft munitions to defend themselves in Israel in a prolonged war. And what the Iranians have set up, their whole strategy is a prolonged war, what's called a war of attrition, to wear your enemy down. They're taking a lot of serious punches, but they've had for 25 or over 25 years, they've been digging tunnels and building factories underground and manufacturing missiles and getting ready for this day. And this is what the final judgment's coming down to. So according to the people that I respect that have been right up to now, the Israelis and the US basically have about another week worth of full-time munitions use, some anti-aircraft munitions use. Their Patriot and THAAD missile systems are running out, and they can't produce them fast enough. The United States has what's called a private system of weapons procurements, not a state system like China and Russia have, where they can just gear up and start producing rapidly. These companies take contracts with the military and provide what their contracts are called for, and that's all they can do. That's all they invest in, the minimum, to make the most profit. And when they say to them, oh, we need every day 100 new missiles, they can't do it. They can't do it a month, 100 new missiles. They can do about 60 missiles a month. And that's the Patriots. The THAAD missiles, even less. So, and they're firing 3 or 4 missiles to knock down each missile that the Iranians send. So back in the 12-day war last June, when Israel attacked Iran, they were already running short of missiles. That's why Israel basically got the US to say, hey, you got to stop this war, because they're about to run out of missiles to defend themselves. So in any case, the Iranians have had 8 months now to prepare for this next war, which they've been expecting. And so what does that mean? The Iranians' goal is to expel the US from the Persian Gulf. Basically, to get all the US military bases shut down and Americans gone from the Persian Gulf, 1. And 2, to destroy Israel to the point where Israel can no longer be a threat to Iran. Okay, it just makes sense. You get attacked, you got to make sure your enemy can't come back and attack you again. Let's finish this. So if it comes to be that the Iranians are successful in expelling the US from their bases in the Persian Gulf and destroying Israel to the point where Israel can no longer be a threat to Iran, what does that mean for the Horn of Africa, right? I mean, and for the rest of the world too. I mean, and see, in the meantime, Iran has shut down the Straits of Hormuz. So no oil can get through there at all unless the Iranians say, okay. Now you got countries like Japan getting like 90% of their oil from the Straits of Hormuz. You got India getting 60% of the oil and a whole bunch of their natural gas too. Now, China's supposedly got 8 months worth of oil reserves. Japan has 6 months. India has 25 days. Okay, so what's going to happen when India runs out of oil and natural gas in a month? If the Straits of Hormuz stay shut, right? So the earth-shaking events happening, literally collapse of governments, collapse of societies. If there's no oil, what are they going to do? You know what I'm saying? They can't, no electricity, no water, no, any case. So there's earth-shaking events happening in the economic realm and in the military realm too, because if Iran expels the US out of the Persian Gulf and controls the Straits of Hormuz, they can say to the UAE, no, don't do this, or none of your oil goes out, or nothing gets into you either. You see what I'm saying? They don't have to go to war. They don't have to attack anybody. They don't have to bomb anybody. They just have to say, this ship cannot pass through the Straits of Hormuz. And there's no Americans there to stop them, so Iran will be able to effectively control what's going on with their neighbors in the Persian Gulf. In other words, Saudi Arabia and everybody's going to have to say to Iran, okay, let's negotiate, right? It's no longer a position of power. It's a position of Iran dominance. Big earth-shaking events there, because the Persian Gulf is the source of oil for so much of the, and natural gas for so much of the world, okay? So if the UAE, because the UAE's been a major player in destabilizing the Horn of Africa they instigated and funded and directed and armed the attempted coup d'etat by the RSF forces led by Hemeti in Sudan. This huge crimes that have been committed in Sudan was basically at the instigation of the UAE, because Hemeti is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I mean, he was basically told by the UAE, you go for it and we'll back you up all the way, which the UAE has been doing. Okay, so all these horrific crimes that have been happening, this famine and massacres in Sudan, is directly tributable to the UAE, United Arab Emirates. And that's being increasingly recognized in the international community. And they've been stepping in and backing Abiy Ahmed's gangster regime, his mafia, in Ethiopia, and providing weapons to Abiy Ahmed. And Abiy Ahmed's actually got a base he set up to attack the Sudanese army from within Ethiopia. Okay, so both armed conflicts have a common thread. That's the United Arab Emirates behind them all, funding, directing, instigating these huge crimes that are happening now. If the UAE goes down because
Thomas, let me interject while you're on the topic, without you shifting somewhere else. Just one quick, maybe it's a questionable thing that has come to my mind, and as you know, the follower, there's a widespread opposition for Abiy. We've known that, and we also know that Ethiopia is mostly a client state for decades. We know that, right? So now, do you feel like maybe it would serve his people better if he worked with Eritrea in terms of access to the sea and all that whole peace process that began and all that stuff? It would serve any common sense person would think that would serve the purpose of the peoples of both countries and the region to work peacefully. So do you feel like maybe there's other ulterior motives in terms of trying to give Eritrea a hard time, Abiy being like the poster child of the client state, and trying, hey, listen, if you don't do this, we're good, because it just doesn't make sense that he doesn't want to work with Eritrea and other parts of the region to help these people economically have a better life. So do you think that has something to do with it as well, is what I'm talking about? Because it's just too much. Every time, every regime that comes into Ethiopia is always, oh, we got to have access to the sea. We got to have access. I mean, come on now. With intelligence, are they trying to insult,
Well, I try to point out to the obviously ignorant people that Eritrea never denied Ethiopia access to the sea. They let the Ethiopians use Eritrean ports basically for free. So it's Ethiopia that stopped using the Eritrean ports. Okay. But see, I remember when Isaias Afwerki, basically, they asked him in an interview, what about the threat with Ethiopia? And Isaias says, there is no threat. Don't have to worry about it. It's not happening. It's not real. When Isaias says that, okay, Ethiopia is, Abiy Ahmed is a short timer. He's not gonna be around that long. We're not gonna have to worry about him much longer. What we have to worry about is what's gonna replace him. Now you see, like I say, Ethiopia is an empire, and this empire is splitting, and there's gonna be a new group of independent states, this is my opinion, and I think Eritrea has almost said this, not openly, but I think in a subtle way, that Amhara is going to be an independent country. Oromo is going to be an independent country. The Somali Ogaden is going to be an independent country. The Afars are going to be an independent country. How are they going to reconcile their natural tensions and strains between them? That's the question, right? So there's only one really army. That's the Fano army that's going to be in a position, to defeat Abiy by them, even not just by themselves, but they're going to be the most powerful forces. Sort of, I mean, the TPLF came to power in 1991. When Eritrea defeated Mengistu and left them, they were the only army. They just took over Ethiopia. Well, Fano's not going to be able to just take over Ethiopia, and I don't think they want to. I think they've got their hands full just trying to get their people fed and clothed and get all the damage that's been done to their country by the Abiy Ahmed regime. And and the Romos, I don't think the Amharas are going to go pick a fight with the Romos. They got, the Romos are armed and giving Abiy a hard time as well. So I think what we're hoping is, and personally, the Eritrea has been planning for this for years. I mean, Isaias Afwerki's, this is something that he's been setting the basis for. He's not somebody just wait till things happen and then respond to it. He's proactive, and Eritrea has been, getting the place ready for this end of the Ethiopian Empire and the birth of these new nations. And to me, this is going to be the ground-shaking event of 2026 in the Horn of Africa, was the birth of Oromia and Amhara and Ogaden, Somalis and Afars and on, right? So the Gambela and, these are going to be new nations now. Hopefully, they'll have something like the Alliance of Sahel States has, where they have 3 independent states, but they work together. And they have, similar positions on foreign policy and economic development and other things. They're independent states. They have their own governments, they have their own leaders, but they work together. So, I mean, what Eritrea has been doing, I had an article called Zimdo, the peace movement grows in the Horn of Africa. And Eritrea has been, this is nurturing and instigating and making sure that Zimdo becomes the policy of peace between peoples. And that's what's already started. And even between Tigrayans and Amhara, that started Zimdo. And even I think between Amhara and Oromo, they started Zimdo. Or at least that's the plan, right? So if they have this Zimdo where the people sit down and people to people start to have, coexistence and peaceful get-togethers, then that's going to establish a culture of cooperation and, working together. Zimdo, like 2 oxen pulling the plow, right? That's the best I could come up with. So, you got to work together, and you got some hard work to do, but you got to do it together, and you can't fight each other, right? So that happens, then Ethiopia is going to has a bright future, because with peace and with the natural resources and the people, all the water they got, Ethiopia should be a breadbasket for Africa with all the water they've got. They've got enormous areas of rich soil in Oromia, and they've got oil and gas in the Ogaden, and they got hydroelectric power, and they work with Eritrea. They have got no problem accessing the ocean. So this is actually potentially a really great thing, but we have to come back to the fact that in the past we would be worrying about the U.S. and the UAE coming in and destabilizing Ethiopia after they drive Abiy out, because Abiy is the puppet for the U.S. and UAE. They drive him out, and they're going to want to come back, and the United States and UAE would rather see in Israel, because Israel's a major player in all this behind the scenes, would rather see Ethiopia disintegrate into chaos and murder and mayhem rather than if they can't control them. They don't want an independent Ethiopia along with Eritrea on the Horn of Africa with control of the Straits of Hormuz. Okay, so, the Straits of Bab al-Mandeb. So, but what's going to happen? Where is this war with Iran headed? And this is all going to affect, like I say, the UAE's ability to interfere in the Horn of Africa, the United States' ability to interfere in the Horn of Africa, and a lot of other places as well, right? So, that's why we need to start looking at this. What's going to happen? Others, it's just going to hit us in the face. Boom! Wow! Ethiopia has collapsed. All these countries are new. What are we going to do? Well, like I said, Isaias has got a plan. I know that. You know he's not been sleeping all these years. And he behind the scenes, they're getting these people ready to become independent countries. And Eritrea is going to be the mediator behind the scenes. But without this could be a very fraught with danger. But with Eritrea there, very carefully, and I'm not saying it's not dangerous times. I'm not saying some disaster is not going to happen. But Eritrea is going to be doing its best. And Isaias is a long-time brilliant diplomat and a military genius. So he knows how to keep, and he knows the Ethiopian people. He knows what it's going to take to get them to live together peacefully and cooperate. And see, for Eritrea, that's a great thing, because if our neighbors, if we have peace in Sudan, they drive out their RSF and get, UAE is no longer involved, and they have peace, and the government can start rebuilding Sudan, and Ethiopia has peace and they can start rebuilding their country after these years of war, then for Eritrea, that's really great. Eritrea's got all these really efficient construction companies, can build roads and other things. They could come in and work there. And then for trade, Eritrea's really been suffering because their two biggest neighbors, especially Sudan, where they had very significant economic interests between the two countries, and now that was all destroyed in this war, right? So Eritrea's just had to go it alone. Their neighbors just are in war, and Eritrea's like set by itself. Well, with peace in Sudan and peace in Ethiopia, Eritrea can begin to really, add to the development of the region, which is going to be critical to the people's welfare, and the people their lives get better. They see that, hey, Zimdo works. You see what I'm saying?
So the original intention, after so many years of war, decades of war and all that, was to see a combined, together Ethiopia working peace and peace with Eritrea. But that doesn't seem to be falling in place since Wayane left, since the TPLF left, and we've, made a peace arrangement with Ethiopia, and we don't see that falling in place. So you think that the best solution now, or do you think that maybe they could all come together by choosing a different leader who may have a mindset similar to Eritrea? Or do you feel like the best way to go about it is, like you said, through fragmentation?
Well, I think the Ethiopian people are fed up with being in the empire. The Oromos certainly are. They've just been treated terribly. They've been the slaves of the empire. And so I don't think they see any point in being a part of Ethiopia again, unless, you know what I'm saying? And the Amhara, they're fighting to get Abiy out of their country, and they realize that they need to get along with the Tigrayans next door. So, I don't see them, I don't see Amhara and the Tigrayans becoming under one government. I don't see the Oromos becoming under one government. Who's going to be the boss, right? I think they've had too much of that by being forcibly incorporated into Ethiopia and forcibly, governed, ruled by the Ethiopian leadership. I think they're fed up with that. I know the Somalis in Ogaden are, the Afars are too. So who's going to actually, there's nobody there. After Eritrea destroyed the Mengistu regime and drove them out of power, the TPLF was there. They had an army, and there was no one else that could oppose them. So they just took over. They walked into a power vacuum, and they took over. It was by default. It's not the case now. There isn't a power vacuum. You've got armed struggles in a number of places, and increasingly the people are talking about independence. They don't want to have somebody that's not one of them tell them what to do, which has been the case since Menelik came in and conquered all these people, right? So if that's the case, if it's inevitable that this is going to be the end of the Ethiopian empire, then what's the next step? Well, like I say, we can't separate this from the earth-shaking events that are taking place in the Persian Gulf right now, because America, the superpower, has always been the ones been able to intervene. Eritrea, after they defeated the TPLF offensive in 2000, wiped them out in the Battle of Sarona, the TPLF army was on the ropes, and Eritrea had all their armor and artillery in reserve, ready to go on offensive and destroy the TPLF and bring a new government to Ethiopia. This was going to take place starting in June of 2000. But the Americans sent an aircraft carrier to the Red Sea and told Eritrea, if you go on this offensive, we will bomb you. So Eritrea couldn't. And they had to leave the TPLF in power in Ethiopia for another 20 years, 18 years, 17 years, I don't know. So in any case, that's sort of been the situation. Now we're in a completely different situation now. And if the US, or in the UAE, and the US particularly, because they're the big godfather of the UAE, are not in a position where they can directly intervene in the Horn of Africa, and Eritrea is growing increasingly strong, not just militarily, but influence-wise, diplomatically, because more and more people are recognizing the fact. I mean, it was Isaias Afwerki that went to Saudi Arabia in this emergency trip and told the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, I got a coup to get rid of you. Really, UAE and Israel have been planning for a long time to come in and oust the Saudi family and take over Saudi Arabia. And UAE was moving militarily towards this, including in Yemen. And Saudi had to, Isaias gave him a woke-up call. I mean, Isaias was there, and like less than 2 days later, a day and a half later, the Saudis were bombing the UAE backed forces in Yemen. So, I mean, Isaias, the Saudis are saying, Isaias has saved our bacon here. I mean, not bacon, but they saved kept our Sebi from burning. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I think Isaias's influence is growing. So, Burhan.
So you're looking at the Yugoslavia, similar situation to Yugoslavia, would you say, in the 90s when Yugoslavia split into all different
Yugoslavia was forcibly broken up by the Western powers. The Germany particularly wanted Yugoslavia to be split up. They wanted a lot of little countries they could pick off one by one. Yugoslavia was a big powerful. They used to make the Yugo automobile, which was competing with the German auto industry. So, I mean, Yugoslavia was a powerful country, and Germany and the West wanted to destroy it, okay? And they did. Now, Ethiopia is not a powerful country. They're not industrialized. They're not economic threat to anybody. They're just, they're in the center of Africa. They're a great big country. They're on the edge of the Horn of Africa. And so, they can play a critical role in controlling the Bab al-Mandeb, which is the, major concern of the Western countries, right? So I mean, the comparison to Yugoslavia there's some things that are interested, but it's fundamentally different. But if what's going to happen, because if these countries do have new countries, right, and how are they going to work together? But we know Eritrea is going to play a role. We've got a role model with the Alliance of Sahelian states that to show, like, do it like this, right? It works. So I think, but again, what's going to happen? I mean, the Hormuz Straits are shut down. A lot of economies are going to collapse. I mean, if Saudi can't export their oil, if these Bahrain and these other countries can't export their oil and their gas, their economies are going to collapse. Mm-hmm. So in the Japanese,
let me ask you the role of the current situation, the earth crisis that we're seeing right now. In terms of UAE, in terms of Qatar, I've even spoken to a couple of people in Qatar a few days ago. They've had some serious scare. And do you feel like that is going to impact on how the situation in Ethiopia and in the Horn of Africa develops going forward?
Of course. But, if there's a people are saying the American economy has been shaky. They've got this big, huge debt problem, right? That's one of the reasons Trump went into Venezuela, snatched their oil, and they want to take Iran's oil too to solve America's debt problem. $35 trillion in debt. So, I mean, at some point, no one's going to want U.S. dollars anymore. And China's already moving away from not buying U.S. treasuries anymore. They're selling their treasuries. So the ability of America to dominate, they have two things they dominate with: their military and the dollar. And the military, if the people don't accept the dollar, don't use the dollar, then bring the military in to beat them over the head and force them to do that, right? Well, if America can no longer come in and beat people over the head, then why should everybody accept the dollar when they've got other alternatives? And Xi Jinping, the head of China, just recently announced He wants to replace the dollar with the Chinese yuan. Now that's big news. You think it would be all over the Western media. China's going to take over the international financial system. But that's what Xi Jinping announced this.
So the BRICS is not going to have an impact in there? BRICS, you feel like the BRICS isn't tied into it?
Look at India. I mean, India's on the verge. I mean, they got 25 days worth of oil and their country's going to collapse. Where are they going to get their replacement? They don't have a source unless Iran opens up the straits, right? And India's been cooperating with Israel.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Iran is like, hey, you're not our friend. So, you know, all of this has got like, you know, this, there's a lot of outside. I mean, Africa is not just by itself. Africa is very dependent on the rest of the world for much of what it consumes because of neo-colonial rule by the West. You know, that they've kept Africa as a producer of raw materials and importer of finished products. And, you know, if maybe China has started to replace that from the West, but that's still Africa's situation. Now, you know, if Korea and Japan and these other countries go into economic crisis, and if the United States debt crisis crumbles, and the United States starts having major internal problems with their economy falling apart, because something like what the financial crisis of 2008, when, you know, the banks were too big to fail, well, they bought their way out of that. The United States is now they can't buy their way out of it anymore. And they've got all these derivatives and hedge funds that are all basically a house of cards. They're a Ponzi scheme that they've got money sucked into. Even artificial intelligence is a Ponzi scheme. None of it's making a profit. And they're investing huge amounts of money into that. And if none of that pays off because the economies outside collapse that the U.S. depends on, then the U.S. is going to go into financial crisis. And if these banks start collapsing and the government just can't come in and throw $100 trillion at them that anybody's going to accept outside the United States, and the dollar becomes no longer is the world standard, that the yuan takes over, then nobody has to take American dollars. And then nobody wants to buy American debt because they know the Americans aren't going to pay it off. And then what's America going to do? How are they going to fund this society that we live in? If no longer everything coming from China is no longer cheap, you know what I'm saying? So all of this is like, whoa, opens up a can of worms, because the Horn of Africa is directly tied into all of this, because we're not a self-sufficient region. Africa is not self-sufficient. So we depend on outside countries to keep supply with the life necessities, right? So now Eritrea is, of course, the role model in becoming self-sufficient. You know, food security is national security, and Eritrea has just about achieved complete food security. I don't think they're 100% secure in vegetable oil, and I don't think they're 100% secure in sugar. But other than that, they don't need anything, really. I mean, they do import other things, but they don't have to. They can feed their own people. Okay. Ethiopia can't. Sudan can't. Egypt can't. None of these other countries can. So, you know, there's a lot of work to do. Plus, on top of all this, the United States crumbling and the Iran's victorious in the Persian Gulf, and the Arab countries having to toe the Iranian line to the control of the Straits of Hormuz, all of this becomes like, whoa, this is like looking into a crystal ball and seeing what's the future holds, right? And I'm saying it's like kind of mind-blowing. And it's happening, you know, just it's been 6 days since this war broke out. And so
that's good analysis. And you know, a couple of pointers that I wanted to make was, first, Tigrinya Samati, sorry, በእንግሊሽ ጌርናዮ ሁሉ ግን ቀስ እናበልኩም ነህር ሰሚዕኹሞ ምስቲ ኩነታት ናይ ሃገርና ዝኸይድ መደብ ስለ ዝኾነ ቀስ ኢልኩም ተረዲእኹም ከምቲ ካልእ ዜናታትን ሶሻል ሚድያን ትርእይዎ ዳርጋ ከምኡ እዩ ግን ቀስ ኢልኩም ተረዲእዎ ሎሚ ብእንግሊሽ ዝገበርናዮ ምስ ቶማስ ማውንትን ዳርጋ ኤርትራ ሳፀቢቑ እዩ ዝፈልጣ ብጣዕሚ ኣብኡ ተቐሚጡ ነይሩ ነዊሕ ዓመታት ከም ትፈልጥዎ ታሪክ ናቱ በጊስልኩም ነይሩ መትከልካ እንድሕር ገለ ክትብል ሕሽክ ክትብለና ደሊኻሲ أدل كده بقى مونغو لو تخون أنتي متكل.
Thank you. انتي قبل دل مثلكم تشعت ميتن عسرت تشعت تقاتل تمدب لهم. 926 በጽሕኩም ኣለኹም ሕጂ ቀዳማይ ነገር ላይክ ግበሩ ካልኣይ ነገር ከዓኒ ሼር ግበርዎ ምክንያቱ እዚ ኣገዳሲ እዩ ኣፍንጫኻ ተተሃሪሙ ስነ ዓይንኻ ነብዕ እዩ ሕጂ ምናልባት እዚ ውግእ ዝካየድ ዘሎ ኣብ መንጎ ኢራንን ኣብ መንጎ እስራኤልን ኣብ መንጎ ኣሜሪካን ይመስለና ይኸውን እዚ ግን እቲ ናይ ኢምፓየር ምትሕሓዝ ዘለዎ እቲ ኢምፓየር እናወደቐ ኸይድ ስለ ዘሎ ከዓኒ ናይ ዓቕሊ ፅበት ኣብ ኩሉ ብትንክፍ እዩ ከም ሓረግ ተተሓሓዘ ወይ ድማ ከም ሰንሰለት ተጠናነገ ስለ ዝኾነ ከዓኒ ብጣዕሚ ገዳሲ እዩ ምክንያቱ ከምቲ ኩሉ መዓልቲ ድብልዎ ፍልጠት ይስከመካ ዳ እምበር ኣይትስከሞን ኢኻ ስለዚ ብጣዕሚ ኣገዳሲ እዩ ብተወሳኺ ነቶም ኣሚን እንግሊሽ ደይሰምዕ ኣሎ ኢለ ኣምን የኽስእ ኩልኩም ትሰምዑ ኢኹም ምናልባት ብትግርኛ ይተርጎመልና እቲ ነጥቢ ትብሉ ሰባት እንድሕር ኣለኹም ሓደ ፀሓፉ እንድሕር ብእንግሊሽ ጥራሕ ከም ዘለዎ ይቐፅል ትብሉ ኣለኹም ኣኒ ከም ዘለዎ ንቐፅል ማለት እዩ ካብዚ ሓሊፈ Thomas, I mean, I absolutely agree with most of the things that you say, and I have a question for you. But before I proceed to that question, there is many empires in the past, from Roman Empire or British Empire or the Ottoman Empire, whatever empire that came in the past. And now they are in the dust. But there is something that resonates with me. History repeat itself because they go through 6 stages of collapsing empire, which is number 1, it is overspending and overextension, which if we see in US case, we have almost 800, 900 military bases. And in military, the worst thing is to maintain this military presence. And logistic and everything is the worst thing. The other one is the financial crisis. You mentioned a little bit, $35 trillion. What I would say is about $39 trillion. So I add 4 more currently as this time. So we are officially in debt and we cannot even pay the minimum payment. Number 3, it is losing trust on the institution. I mean, in US, if you see anyone, or in Europe, even I can go further, none of the public believe the institution or the government of their countries. Number 4, it is internal division or, the internal division. As you see in America, there is red states and blue states, or red or Republican and Democrat. This is like, it seems to me, as divide and conquer. And now even Solo, I just send you a video. I just send you a picture. If he can show that picture, and I'm going to read. Okay. I received information in a couple of days from some colleagues, some people that I know in military, and they trying to make it look like what they said is U.S. commanders across more than 30 military bases told troops the Iran war is part of God's plan and link into Armageddon. A commander said Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon. The Military Religious Freedom Foundation, MRFF, say it has received over 110 similar complaints. I would go further on this one also. It is almost 200 something. So the question that I'm trying to raise is after I add number 5 and number 6, which is the final stage of collapsing an empire, is withdrawal from, number 5 is withdrawal from global commitment. We got out from the Paris Climate Accord the peace or the peace committee or something like that, in Gaza peace committee that he created, is to replace the UN. And also, there is a lot of nuclear treaties or long-range and intercontinental ballistic missiles that we got out under Trump administration. So putting all this as a context, are the empire collapsing? And is this a desperation or a desperate attempt to regain the throne back, all this chaos that we've seen around the world? And then when you answer that one, then I have another question for you. Thank you.
Well, the empire is collapsing. There's no question about that. I mean, I see the Iranians winning this war of attrition against the Americans. And I think a lot of the people that really have predicted all this and know what they're talking about see this the same way. But at some point, the Americans, I mean, back in the 12-day war last June when Israel and Iran was fighting, Israel had to come basically beg for a ceasefire because they'd run out of defensive missiles. And the situation hasn't got much better for them. I mean, they're running out. And so when they do run out, what are they going to do? Are they just going to sit back and get flattened? So, I mean, that's going to, what happens to Israel is very powerful influence on the United States because every U.S. congressman has at least one full-time minder from the Zionist lobby in the United States, at least one full-time minder, just actually literally sitting at a desk in their office. Some of them got multiple members, the critical people in the congressional committee. So when Israel starts getting hammered by Iran because they've run out of defensive capability, their anti-aircraft missiles are exhausted, and Iran's got all these drones. Iran drones are so advanced that the Russians bought them from them. They started manufacturing Iranian drones in Russia because the Iranian drones are so effective and economical, and Iran's got a lot of them. And once they haven't got missiles to knock them down, those drones can make life in Israel hell. And that's what I think Iran is planning on doing. So when all that happens, that's going to put pressure on the U.S. as well. How are they going to sit back and just watch their Zionist attack dog just get hammered, which is what it looks like is going to be happening starting about a week from now. I mean, we can all dream, right? I mean, we've been watching this crime in Gaza and hoping someday there'd be justice on earth and maybe God will come down and punish these people, right? So, but all of this is going to bring a lot of different things to bear in the United States. And, the economic crisis, the military defeats, they're being forced to leave bases, and the internal turmoil as the economy starts going bad. I'm a revolutionary. I always wanted to see. I never voted. I never voted in my life in the United States. I never voted because I never believed in this. I always saw it as a trap to suck the American people in to say, look, you can make a difference. Just give us time. Choose the lesser of two evils instead of seeing it as the evil of two lessers. That's how they've got us sucked into this voting thing, right? And that's how they keep control. They say, oh, you agreed to all this. This is what you want. Everybody voted for Trump because he was going to keep us out of war. He does the exact opposite. But, that's democracy, right? That's what they want Eritrea to have. No. So, there's what's going to happen in the United States now. That's something, I ain't got that. I can see the rest of the world and how it affect the United States. But what's going to happen in the United States, that's another question. But, of course, the United States is the biggest wild card in having peace, But see, the reality is, if you look at Eritrea is actually getting more self-sufficient. I mean, they grow their own food. They've got this mining industry. I mean, they've got the Embadurho mine coming online in a few months. And, that's a lot of money coming in. They've had the Harena mine operating in outside of Bisha, and now the potash mine is supposed to be coming online by the end of the year. So you're going to see hundreds of millions of dollars coming into the Eritrean treasury, and that's going to allow Eritrea to become even more self-sufficient and develop a lot of ways to, everything from medicine to manufacturing. I mean, Eritrea's got deals with the Italians and the South Koreans to come in and start doing things in Eritrea, to build houses. to set up factories that Eritrea can produce value added to our raw materials, to our agricultural produce, to modernize our agriculture to the point with the I mean, look at the Gathalai. It's so huge that it can walk all the way, not just to Gathalai, which is about 1,000 hectares, really rich soil.
See there? We're losing connection, I think. ተኸታተልቲ ክቡራት ቶማስ ፀገማት ይጋጥሞ ለመሰን ይመትከል ቀጽል
Yeah, ብሕፅር ዝበለ I think connection ናይ ታመስ ቁሩብ ተቋሪፅ ኣሎ ስጋዕ እሱ ድምለሰና ግን ብሕፅር ዝበለ ስነ እቲ ክንብሎ ድቐነና እዩ ድብሎ ደሎ ብሕፅር ዝበለ እዚ ኩናት እዚ ኣብ መንጎ ኢራንን ኣብ መንጎ ኣብቲ ናይ ፊድባክ እዚኣ ስእሊ ካብ ደምፀኻ ያሰሎ ኣብቲ ፊድ የርኢ ነይረ ሕቶታት ንትራምስኒ ናይ ኣምላኽ ልኡኽ እዩ ኣብቲ ናይ ኣምላኽ ድመፀሉ እዋን ኢሎም ናይ ሃይማኖታዊ ነገር ከምስልዎ እሞኒ ኢሎም ድገብርዎ ዘለዎ እዮም ንዑ ሒዞም ከዓ ናይ ኣምላኽ ፀጋ ኣለዎ ወይ ድማ ናይ ኣምላኽ ልኡኽ ኢሎም እዮም ዓበይቲ ሰባት ንዑ ተንኪፎም ድፅልዩ ዘለው እዚ ከዓ እንታይ እዩ እኩብ ፅላለ ጥራሕ ድብሎ ካብ ዝወፃእ ካሊእ ትብሎ ነገር የለን ምክንያቱ ኣነ ንሓደን ክፈርድ ኣይክእልኒ ምክንያቱ ልብን ኩላሊትን ድምርምር ረቢ ወይ ድማ ኣምላኽ በዓል እዩ ስለዚ ኣነ ንሓደ ሰብ እዝን ኢለ ክዛረብ ኣይክእልኒ እቲ ሓደ ሰብ ግን በቲ ዓለማዊ ክትሪኦ ከለካ እቲ ዝኸፍአ ሰብ ኮይኑ ዋላ ብሸቐጥን ኣብ ሸፈጥን ዝነበረ እንድሕር ኮይኑ ምዝ ናይ ኤፕስቲን ድወፅእ ዘሎን ካሊእን ርኢኻ ዋላ ማፃፅኡ ካብ ቀደም ጀሚርካ ትራምስኒ እቲ ኣብቲ ናይ ሰይጣናዊ ነገር ተደይ ኮይኑ ኣብቲ ናይ መልኣኻዊ ነገር የለን ሶሎ ማይክ እንታሽ ምግበራ ሚት ግበራ ንሓንስ
Hey, I'm back.
Okay. Continue, Thomas.
Well, the like I say, Eritrea is on the verge of having their economy really take off. I mean, after all these years of drought and sanctions and war, and now with the foreign currency, very serious amounts of foreign currency coming into the country, and Isaias can start to implement the plans he's been dreaming about and preparing for a long time. And he's been going. He went to Italy and he talked to the Italian businessmen. He went to the Koreans, and so this like Eritrea is like looking at major industrial development, not just becoming a producer of raw materials, but actually industrial development and diversifying that. I mean, Eritrea is moving into solar, so they don't have to be dependent on oil. But though Eritrea does have oil and gas, they know they have oil and gas, and so Eritrea has got a lot of ways that with the money they can start to become even more self-sufficient, and that sort of isolates the shock, especially the shock of climate disaster, because as droughts and the world dries up and heats up, you're going to have our neighbors are going to just get hammered. I mean, they've already been hammered, but it's just going to be critical, and you're going to be like an island of food in a horn of hunger. Unless Eritrea can get, like they were trying to get the Somalis to start doing water conservation, to start building, because Somalis have water. They just have to store it and use it. It's water is food in the bank. If the Somalis could do that, there wouldn't be any hunger in Somalia anymore. They got a lot of rich agricultural lands. They just don't have the water to develop it. Well, Eritrea's huge dams and have got water now, so we can start not only feeding our country, we should be able to start exporting food. We should have so much. So, that's sort of like the role model. It has been the threat of a good example, but it shouldn't be a threat any longer, because the United States and these other people should be on the back foot so much that they're having to deal with their own internal problems. They can't worry about Eritrea anymore. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're hoping, is that the rest of the world will leave us alone in the Horn of Africa and let not only Eritrea develop, but be a role model for the rest of the Horn of Africa to develop and the rest of Africa to develop.
Yeah, but Thomas, yeah. If I could ask, isn't that the issue when we look at things from I'm bringing a little different perspective here. For example, countries like Libya, countries who have been able to do things on their own, helping their people, building. I mean, that's a God-given human rights of a nation, right? To do that, but we weren't even allowed to do that because somebody wanted something that we own, which is the Red Sea, right? But at the end of the day, why now all of a sudden has it become important to understand this simple, situation that's been going on for decades?
Well, Africa has been suffering under neocolonialism. I mean, after World War II, Africa didn't have independence. They basically became dependent on the World Bank and the IMF, controlled by predatory loans from the World Bank and the IMF. Only one country, Eritrea. I mean, it's Libya and Botswana, but Botswana's a little country and it's kind of distorted economy on diamonds. And Libya had all this oil, and that's all come crashing down. Now Libya is like a basket case. Okay, so Eritrea is the only really growing economy that's not in Africa that's not dependent on the World Bank and the IMF. The bankster, predatory bankster, come in and suck the blood of Africa. So now, if we can get like the Sahel countries, they're cutting their ties with the Western financial institutions and becoming self-sufficient, right? I mean, it's easier for them because, for example, Burkina Faso produces how many $1 billion a year in gold? So they got cash to throw around and develop really fast. You know what I'm saying? And even Niger, they got uranium. How many billions of dollars of uranium coming in every year? And even Mali it's got gold and other resources, right? So they can develop because they've got resources to sell. Eritrea's had been going through like a little hard time, but now that Eritrea is getting their resources developing, right? And there's after they've got this Embadurho mine for copper and some gold, and then there's the potash mine and the next biggest potash mine in the world, and potash is like $1,000 a ton, and they're talking about a million tons a year, $1 billion a year coming in from potash forever and ever. And then we've got the Alpha exploration mine in Aberna down in Kashbarka, and they're about to come out with their maiden resource estimate, and will lead to the mine being sold and developing the mine. Chinese will probably come in and buy it up because there should be enough gold in there with the price of gold now. So another gold mine coming online. So we've got other mines that are in the works, and this will make Eritrea a rich country. And like your President Isaias says, we want a rich Eritrea, but we don't want rich Eritreans. So people say, oh, how come they don't open up the economy? How come they don't let business? How come they don't let this? Well, we want a rich Eritrea, but we don't want rich Eritreans. We don't want we want a few rich people and a whole lot of poor folk. We want rich Eritrea without rich Eritreans. That's where you have a safe, secure, progressive society that's truly democratic, because the word democratic means social equality. So Eritrea is actually a democracy. Its goal is social equality. The rest of these Western countries, they poison the meaning of the word democratic and democracy because they're not. They're just big hypocrites. The social inequality is growing in these countries. Eritrea is developing and committed to social equality. A rich Eritrea without rich Eritreans. I mean, that's where I think Eritrea is headed. And that's very, if you let people come in, I mean, on the one hand, you do need the energy and the skills of people in the diaspora that can come in and help the economy develop. The problem is there's sort of a culture of greed in the outside, and businesses tend to, just look out for themselves. They don't look out what's best for the country. So, that's a problem. It's just like when Eritrea was letting the private sector build houses. Back when we first came to Eritrea, the government had to shut it down because they were so corrupt. I mean, one company taking deposits for 70 houses, they couldn't build 70 houses in 10 years. And, and they were bribing the inspectors and building shoddy and work that had to be knocked down because of bribery and corruption. And it's like, whoa, this doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Until we've developed our infrastructure for the administration, this is not going to work in the private sectors. Who's going to control it? It's going to be just too much corruption, and it's going to be a problem like the rest of Africa. So Isaias is moving very slowly in this way, and he's looking at, working with private sector from outside in a major way. I mean, if you got $25 million Eritrea, once you come invest. If you got 500,000, not so much, right? So I think that's where we're headed. But and in the light of all that, all of a sudden Eritrea has been like, I mean, way back in June of 2000, at the height of the third offensive, when the TPLF was invading Eritrea, I wrote an article entitled "U.S. Behind Invasion of Eritrea." The U.S. has been trying to destroy Eritrea from the get-go. They never wanted it. They sent the TPLF to destroy it, and they continue to put sanctions and everything else to try to cripple Eritrea and bring about regime change or whatever they could do, right? And it didn't work. The Eritreans never kneeled down. I mean, I don't know if you watch Awel Said. He's got his show about Zimdo. Well, I was recently on his second time I was on his show, and basically he used my interview with Ashwin Ratansi, and where I talked about Eritreans never kneeled down, right? I mean, he even had it translated to Amhara, so I guess it sort of had an impact to go that far, right?
Yeah.
But
only on 2 occasions.
yeah,
When we pray, when we shoot, right?
yeah. The second one was like he translated to Amhara, made a special show in Amhara. Say, hey, go well. But it's like the government in Eritrea is facing up to enormous challenges, because you don't just live in an island. We're not an island. No country is an island. You know what I'm saying? We've got neighbors that are in the midst of civil wars, and Eritrea has got to play a role in bringing peace to our neighbors, or we're never going to be secure. And if we really want to be prosperous, we need a stable, peaceful, developing Sudan and a stable, peaceful, developing Ethiopia. The two large countries right next to us, if they're doing better, then we can trade with them, then Eritrea will be in the driver's seat, because Eritrea can actually start to show the way forward for these people if their leadership will listen, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm presenting too glowing a picture, but I like to be optimistic, and I like to be confident in the leadership qualities of Isaias Afwerki, and he knows, he's got a vision, he's working hard, and he should be around long enough to see this stuff come to fruition. But again, there's a big war raging right next door to us in the Persian Gulf, and one of our neighbors that we've been working closely with around limiting the impact of the influence of the UAE and the ability to create murder and mayhem in the Horn of Africa on the part of the UAE in Saudi Arabia. And it seems to have growing influence with Saudi Arabia, and all of a sudden, whoa, Saudi Arabia and everybody, you're going to have to face, they don't have the big brother military to protect them anymore. And they're going to have to toe the line with Iran when Iran wins this war, which is what it's looking like. So, but Iran may have to bring the world's economy to its knees before they actually succeed in this, because they control the lifeline for all these economies and the oil coming out. I mean, there's one thing that all countries in the world have to have. You know what that is? Oil. Every country in the world has to have oil. And a whole bunch of that oil comes out of the Persian Gulf. And now Iran controls that. I mean, China is not happy because they get a whole bunch of their oil from Iran, and and the rest of the economies that the Chinese are diversifying to away from the United States get their oil from the Persian Gulf, and Iran's blocked that oil. So I mean, it's like, okay, they're going to have a deal where the Chinese ships get through and nobody else does, or everybody else that supports Iran ships get through and the others don't. I mean, I think that's where we're headed right now.
I've seen some analysts say, yes, USA took over Venezuela's leadership and all that, and the oil, probably some of it would have benefits, but they're saying that in order for the Venezuelan hard oil to function well in this country, they do need the Iranian oil, because it's a lot more. I don't know if they said it was more liquider, and the other one is more harder.
It's high in sulfur. The Venezuelan oil is high in sulfur. It takes special refineries to refine it. But even the Saudi oil is not. It's not like Libyan oil. They call it the light, sweet crude. Even the Saudi oil is a little bit high in sulfur. So they But it takes special refineries. That's all. But China has built the refineries for the Iranian oil, because Iranian oil is kind of high sulfur. But you build refineries for what you got, and that's what the Chinese are doing. But and on top of all this, you see, you've got the Russians defeating basically the United States and Europe in Ukraine. So, I mean, one of the reasons why there are no air defense systems for the defend Israel and the Middle East is because the U.S. had to take them all for Ukraine. So, Ukraine collapsing and the Russians winning there, and this whole is going to result in regime change in Europe. I mean, Starmer, Macron, and Merz in Germany, they're not going to survive defeat in Ukraine. I mean, they're staked their whole everything on that, winning Ukraine. And if Ukraine goes down and the Russians win, because they're winning, that's going to be another big blow to the United States. Even though they've pulled out, the United States is going to be shook up. And the United States is taking over Russian gas supplies to these United States, liquid natural gas now that's the Europeans are burning. And if they see that, wow, United States we don't need the United States, and they go back to Russian gas, that's another big blow to the U.S. You see what I'm saying? So there's so many things right now that, that whether it's Ukraine or Iran winning in the Persian Gulf, what's going to come, the United States is taking a beating, and it's just started. And, when if the U.S. collapses, oof, where's the world going to head? I mean, it's like when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was the biggest event, most momentous and powerful event to happen in the world in the second half of the 20th century, the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the United States is the superpower. And when the United States collapses, which is, to me, this word, I don't see how it's not going to collapse. They got a house of cards right now. And if it collapses, what's going to happen? I mean, where's the rest of the world is going to be, whoa. I mean, China's the factory of the world. So, China's going to step up and take over the international currency. And Russia's going to have the most powerful military in the world, battle hardened, best armed and most powerful military in the world, 1 million-man army ready to go. Europe's going to have to bow down to Russia, and because the United States is not going to be able to protect them anymore. So, I mean, Russia doesn't want to conquer Europe. They want to do business with Europe. They want Europe to buy their gas, and they want Europe to get rich and buy Russian things and Russian trade with them. But the United States doesn't want any of this. And if the United States goes down, oof, psycho,
Well, I think living in this country for many years and understanding the dynamics of the politics and all the things that have been going on over the years, I do also believe that if there's a way to get this country to start thinking a little differently in terms of how things have been run, and maybe if people start waking up and the majority of the people in this country start pushing, do you feel like maybe there could be some kind of order where people are going to be able to do their own thing while working together in partnership with a country that's actually still kind of one of the most powerful in the world? I mean, I'm asking this question because it is something that we have to also look back and think about, right?
Well, Trump has made it very clear that America is basically two. It's not one America. And there's the people that support Trump, and there's the people that don't. And so, I don't go by that red, blue, straight stuff. I just go by, what people think. And a lot of people supported Trump and don't anymore. So there's been some hard lessons being learned. But the problem is, in the United States, to have change, you have to have a conscious leadership. And there's no conscious leadership in this country. All they have is people that are, good at talking or on the payroll. So, Zionism is actually the AIPAC, and these guys have been taking some lickings, and everybody's trying to distance themselves from AIPAC because Israel is so unpopular. And now with Israel potential destruction by Iran in this war, a lot of these people are no longer going to be able to just, get on the Zionist tit and get fat. They're going to have to start, listening to their own voters. But, I don't believe any of this electoral politics going to bring any change. Not seriously. I mean,
Well,
maybe
my thinking comes from what you just mentioned. You know, the APAC ruling the Congress here, which is one of the branches of government here in this country, right? And also it's connected to the other ones. However, do you feel like maybe fundamental changes that could come across? Because there's a lot of people who are opposing what's going on around the world right now, based on everything that whatever the powerful are trying to use to scare tactic everybody. But the population, the public is really angry based on. I mean, when you see the algorithms now on social media and stuff, people are angry. People are mad. There's a lot more people who are angry than they're not. So, what do you think? Maybe that could play some kind of role in some kind of change or reform.
well, again, it has to have some direction, and who's going to lead it. I mean, I remember when the Black Lives Matter broke out. I mean, here in Lynchburg, they had 500 people demonstrating in the center of the city over Black Lives Matter. In Lynchburg, this is the home of Jerry Falwell's Liberty University. Like, whoa. So, but the problem was there was no leadership. I mean, if Kwame Ture had still been alive when Black Lives Matter broke out, and Kwame, international reputation, famous in the Black American community, Kwame Ture could have got up there and said, man, this is what we need. We need this, overthrow the government. We need revolution. And all these black folk would have said, yeah, tell it, bro. Instead, they got to say, oh, we got to vote for this guy. We got to get this policy. And you know what I'm saying? It all fizzled out. If Kwame had been there, he would have raised consciousness. He could have developed organization, because organization is what it takes. You get issues, you get mad, you get people angry. But unless they got organization, you can't implement any change. Okay, so that's sort of where America is really lacking right now. I mean, I left America hoping not to have to move back here because I was so fed up with the the politics of this country and the arrogance and the racism and the United States first. I mean, Obama was like, whoa, black folk was the backbone of the resistance, and then black folk became part of the system. And so it's like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I look at these black Americans. It used to be like Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and revolutionary and power to the people. And now all they're, it's like, man, they're lost. I mean, they're a crushed and broken people, and they're lost in the wilderness. And I don't see them leading like it used to be. It looked like black folks are always at the forefront of the Vietnam War, the anti-war struggle, the civil rights struggle, the economic struggles. Black folks was at the front, leading the way. Not anymore. That's why Obama was so, powerful. So, I mean, I think America is going to probably break up into a civil war. I mean, I just don't see this being solved peacefully. One thing Trump has established is that basically Congress and the Supreme Court are, they're null and void. I mean, Trump can do what he wants. I mean, we have masked men with guns snatching people off the street in the United States. And it's still going on all over the country. It got so bad in Minnesota, they ended up killing a couple of white people. A couple of white people got killed. Whoa, everybody had a heart attack. We can't be killing white people. Cops can kill black people every day in the United States. 1,000 people get killed every year by the police. But that ain't no big deal. But they killed a couple of middle-class white people, and man, the whole country went crazy. Okay, so they had to pull the troops, the Gestapo out of Minnesota, but they're still there. They're still snatching people out of places. They're still, making people afraid. And that's the whole point. You want people to be afraid. When people are afraid, you terrorize them, they don't resist. They just try to go about their lives and survive. So that's what the point of Trump is. Trump is like, this fascism thing, make people afraid. So what's the resistance to Trump? Well, it's spontaneous. People just are angry. They go out in the street. White people go down the street and risk their lives, with armed ice guys, masked armed icemen shooting folks. But they still go out in the street because they just don't want to live like this. So I know there's a potential for a lot of resistance, but where's the leadership? You can have explosions and then you go back to the same old, same old. So, I mean, that's what I think.
Do you think now, for most people who actually come from different parts of the world in this country, maybe, for example, in Eritrean's case, do you feel like Eritrea would be a better, safer place to go back to if things were starting to develop economically?
Hey, I get some money. I'm building a house. I got land in Asmara. I bought land way back in 2004. we're going to build ourselves a villa, small villa there with a service in the back. They're going to fix the water problem. They're going to fix the electric problem. They're going to get medicine manufactured. Be safe in Asmara. My problem is I got altitude sickness, and I got, just surviving in Asmara kind of kills me. But I can't sleep in Asmara. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, I wasn't like that when I first got there, but over the years it just got worse as I got older. But we can always dream. Every Eritrean's got a dream to have a house in Asmara or someplace, right? You know what I'm saying? Or
with the Pan-African spirit, I guess the band Osibisa, if you remember from the 70s, they sung a song called Welcome Home.
They were a hippie band. They were a hippie band. Black hippies.
Yeah. So I think that this Welcome Home song actually comes in probably at the right time right now. And, I just feel like things are changing for all of Africa. I see Burkina Faso, I see Mali, I see Niger, I see even other parts of Africa starting to change gradually and getting modernized. I know people have moved to Ghana. And so do you feel like maybe Africa would be the next place where people are going to kind of resonate to?
Well, right now you've got Eritrea and you've got the Sahel states. And other than that, they're all neo-colonial. I mean, Sudan, they got to get their country. They got a decade just to get back up on their feet. And Ethiopia, has got this huge turmoil, and who knows if it's going to stay safe for the people there. But hopefully, yes. But the rest of Africa, Ghana, please. Ghana is up to the president saying, we're not going to take any more money from the IMF. Please. You know what I'm saying? The rest of these countries, look at Nigeria. Nigeria is like a failed state. Most of these countries are a failed state. I say, if your people are cold, hungry, sick, and illiterate, then you're a failed state. And if you look at most of these African countries, they are failed states. It's just neo-colonialism. So they're going to have to go through their own revolutions. I don't see how, maybe.
Well, on that end, I'll give Metkel an opportunity, and I'd probably have him take over because I probably have to leave in a second. But
matter of fact, I got to go pick up my wife, so we got to wrap this up.
Yes, let's wrap it up. Give us our final conclusion. Anything you want to send to the Eritrean community out there. We also want to thank Solo Media for allowing us to be on this program, and we'll bring you back more, and we'll translate some of the things you're saying for our audience because a lot of it is very important. So with that said, Metkel, I'll give you the mic, and we can wrap it up, and we'll give Thomas the last word.
Thank you, Thomas. There is a lot of questions that is coming to me, and I know you have to go, but one of the questions that resonate with me is the recent U.S.-Israel strikes on Iran have immediately turned the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait into potential high-risk zone, giving a heavy U.S. presence in Camp Leonard in Djibouti and the United Arab Emirates base in Berbera, Somaliland. How vulnerable are these Horn Africa nations to begin digging into conflict that is not they are making? That's the question for you.
Well, the UAE has been the main destabilizing force in the Horn of Africa. And they started the war in Sudan, and they're prolonging the war in Ethiopia. So if we can get them out, then we got a chance for some peace, right, with our neighbors. And, and Djibouti is basically a province of Ethiopia. It always has been. So it's this tiny little country, and they got a lot of foreign bases there. But, if Djibouti is not really a player, they're just sort of like a, puppet. But, I think that the potential for peace in the Horn of Africa is actually greater than the potential for war in the Horn of Africa, because I think the tide has turned in Sudan. I think the Abiy Ahmed's days are numbered, and I think peace will come to both of these countries. And with that, I think, they're the big countries. We still got problems with Kenya, and, and Somalia is a problem, but, the Somalis just postponed their election a year because they know that if Formaggio is going to come back and clean this whole place up. And so they don't want to have an election right now. But in any case, I see peace breaking out in the Horn of Africa more than war. I mean, I think the defeat of the U.S. and Israel in the Persian Gulf, I think, will stabilize the region more than destabilize it. I think because Israel and UAE has been this pact with the devil, and I think with the defeat of Israel and the U.S. being driven out from the region, then I think there'll be less conflict. I think there'll be less intervention. I think there'll be more cooperation and more. I mean, the bad guys aren't going to be the ones running the show. So that's about. I look forward to the next few years as very promising, even though they're all also kind of risky, right? So with that said, we'll see if my crystal ball is going to come back to bite me. But that's sort of, it's not just me. I follow a lot of the people that have been right and know what they're talking about. So I'm sort of a student of revolution and a student of people that know what they're talking about. So I didn't figure this stuff out on my own. So in any case, it's been great on your show. And if you can email me the questions, don't worry about how many, just email them to me. I really enjoy reading questions from people. So, it's eye-opener for me what I missed and what I didn't, and what the mood of the people is. Okay.
No, definitely, I will do that. Would you be able to take one more question? And this is the last one, I promise.
Okay.
So you have consistently emphasized the importance of historical context in understanding the Horn politics. With the current global focus on the Red Sea, how do you assess Ethiopia's recent aggressive push for naval access? And do you see this as a genuine national interest or a distraction from a deep internal fragility in Amhara, Oromo, and Tigray? In addition to that, I'm going to add a little bit. In recent time, Abiy was comparing between Ethiopian development or the progress in Ethiopia and the progress in Eritrea. Eritrea being a backward or primitive, and Ethiopia is progressing a lot. How do you define, or how do you see his assertion to say? Thank you.
Well, this is the desperation of a leader on his last legs. I mean, Abiy's on his way out. How soon Fano's going to, Fano, we've heard reports that Fano is gathering their forces and preparing for a final offensive. When that comes, Abiy's going to have to flee. Hopefully they'll catch him and bring him to justice. But if they don't, he's going to flee, and he's must got his villa in Dubai ready to go to with his ill-gotten gains, and then Ethiopia is going to have to start rebuilding. So, like Isaiah said, there's not going to be a war with Ethiopia and Eritrea because Ethiopia's army can't even handle Fano, a lightly armed army, and Eritrea's got a battle-harmed just recently Hameti was talking about how he got defeated in Khartoum. He said, drones from the south defeated me. Where's who's south from Khartoum that has drones that's going to attack Hameti? That's Eritrea. So, Eritrea said, no, we're not going to see Sudan fall. So they've got drones. They started hammering them, and even Burhan and everybody said, yeah, Eritrea is our best friend. They really helped us. It's just like when Abiy Ahmed and those guys are saying, oh, Eritrea saved us. Now they're trying to change the story. Abiy's desperate. He's talking a lot of nonsense, and people got to sit back and say, this guy is fantasy world, and his world is crumbling, and a new world's being born as we talk. So I wouldn't get too upset about anything Abiy Ahmed says right now because he's really in no position. He might be able to attack Tigray. He sent an armored column up and found a kid, ambushed it, destroyed a bunch of it, and captured a bunch. So, Abiy is like, whoa, he's in bad shape. And I don't think, he's still dangerous because he's still getting plane loads of weapons from the UAE. And that hasn't stopped yet. So they still got to watch out, but he's on his way out, and we've got to start planning for the future.
Thank you very much for all your time, and I know you have to go pick up your wife. Our best regard to your wife and to your grandchild and your daughter and everybody else. And we'll look forward in the future for you to come and join us. And then I'm going to send you all the questions so we can answer it next time. Mike, if you have anything to say.
No, pretty much. Thank you very much, Thomas, for this timely discussion. I thank you, and I want to say hopefully we'll have you back again sometime very soon. And
it might be sooner than we expect, you know. It might be.
Wishing you all the best in your family.
Things may come crumbling down around us, and we might have to have some more serious talks.
Absolutely. Have a good day, and thank you everybody. سمعت تخاطبتنا بتعمل نمسكنكم لومي توماس ماونتن مسانا أبزي بحبار كوين مسيو كميات وزعما كونتاتنا عالم نمسكنو برنامجنا أبزي نزازم لنا يقني الله.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Ciao. Okay.
بجد قلتم إيه زوجي دفين زركزل እግዚአብሔር ቃል ባለ ሁሉ ይሞ ለዛ ዘውጅ እዚኣ ምስኪን ፊሃ ወይ